This 3-year-old boy shocked everyone in the courtroom during his adoption hearing with one word. The judge ended the session immediately. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to help grow the channel and hear more amazing stories. Jack and Sandra were a married couple who longed to have a child. Despite their best efforts, they struggled to conceive and even faced an ectopic pregnancy which left Sandra over the verge of giving up. To make matters worse, her doctors advised her to abandon her dream of having a biological child due to the high likelihood of life-threatening complications. At her lowest point, Sandra turned to her childhood friend Jane, a social worker, for support. Jane suggested they consider joining a foster program. And although initially hesitant, Sandra eventually agreed and managed to convince Jack, who shared her desire for a child. Jane was able to speed up the couple's paperwork, and just 1 month later, Jack and Sandra got a call. Jane told Sandra that they had a baby who was just 6 days old in urgent need of a loving foster home. His name was Fred, and she proudly announced that she'd already arranged for them to take him in. The couple was brimming with a sense of disbelief and anxious excitement. It all felt so unreal for the both of them, and they agreed that this was in its own a miracle. When Jack and Sandra met baby Fred for the first time, it was love at first sight. He was perfect in every way, and they couldn't be happier. The atmosphere immediately turned to one of joy and warmth as soon as the couple had little Fred in their arms. In the middle of their supervised visit with Fred, out of curiosity, Sandra asked Jane how Fred ended up in foster care. What Jane said next broke the couple's hearts and made them want to protect the child even more than before. Rachel, Fred's mother, had a history of drug addiction and had been pregnant numerous times in the past. However, due to her reliance on drugs, she had chosen to have abortions in most of those cases. When she became pregnant with Fred, she had already undergone too many abortions, and medical professionals warned her that having another one could lead to serious health complications. Therefore, she carried the pregnancy to full term and gave birth to Fred. Adding her decision to give him up was the fact that she had no idea who the father was. So, in a fleeting moment of motherly love, Rachel decided to surrender Fred to child services in the hopes that he'd be adopted by an amazing family who would give him the bright future that he deserved. Sandra held the baby boy close to her chest, feeling a sense of relief that he was finally safe with her and Jack. But the news that Jane had to share with them was even more disheartening. Jane informed the couple with a heavy sigh and hands clasped together that there was a clause that they needed to be aware of. The clause stipulated that if Rachel was to turn her life around and get clean, she could reclaim Fred at any given time, which could potentially take him away from Jack and Sandra. This news struck fear into Jack and Sandra, as they had already viewed Fred as their own and couldn't bear to part with him. Jack immediately asked if there was any way to counteract such a thing, but unfortunately, Jane informed that there wasn't. Following their meeting with Fred, they felt uplifted and decided to maintain a positive attitude. They headed out to purchase all the necessary items required to provide proper care for the 6-day-old infant. The couple hoped that by doing so, they would demonstrate to the court that they were capable of parents who deserved to keep and raise Fred for the long term. The next day, they picked up Fred and brought him home. They transformed their old study into a stunning nursery for the little one. Jack and Sandra took to parenthood like naturals, relishing even the most daunting tasks that would typically overwhelm first-time parents. They didn't mind sleeping restlessly to tend to their baby's every need and found themselves contently watching over him as he slept, even when he didn't require anything from them. The couple was ecstatic about it all and even enjoyed getting to change their son's diapers because to them, little Fred was a beacon of hope for a brighter future. At the beginning, Jack and Sandra were constantly worried about sharing appearing out of nowhere and taking Fred away from them permanently. However, as time passed and weeks turned into months and months into a year, they started to feel more at ease. Jack began to think that maybe Rachel had moved on. However, Sandra continued to harbor a slight fear of losing Fred to his biological mother. Her love for him was so deep that she even had nightmares about the possibility of Rachel taking him away. As far as Jack and Sandra were concerned, Fred was an irreplaceable part of their family and they were determined to keep him with them no matter what. Sandra convinced her husband to take action and hired a lawyer to help them find a legal way to officially adopt Fred and keep him permanently. Despite their efforts, the lawyer was unable to find any loopholes or legal grounds in their favor. They discovered that if Rachel decided to reclaim her biological son, there was nothing that could stop her. The only requirement was for her to prove that she was capable of taking care of him. Furthermore, permanently adopting their adorable toddler would prove to be a difficult and grueling process for the couple and their attorney. Jack and Sandra found themselves still endlessly searching for loopholes or just any way that they could guarantee that Fred would remain in their care. Despite child services constantly reassuring them that Rachel would have to match or beat their parenting in order to have a shot at taking their sweet little boy away from them, the events that unfolded next would be etched in the memories of everyone involved as Jack and Sandra's worst fears became a reality. Rachel had come to claim her baby. To make matters worse, Jane had informed Jack and Sandra that Rachel had turned her life around and could potentially gain custody over Fred. This news was devastating for the couple as they had grown to love Fred as their own and couldn't bear the thought of losing him. "I was devastated when we got to call," said Sandra. "And Jack, well, he just didn't know what to do." At 3 years old, Fred had become an integral part of Jack and Sandra's lives, and they simply couldn't imagine parting with their sweet, giddy toddler. As they reflected on their favorite memories with him, the couple knew that they had to fight for their right to keep him. The couple was devastated to learn during the hearings that things were not going in their favor, but rather in Rachel's. Despite their continuous efforts to dispute Rachel's claims in court, they were not making any headway, feeling defeated, but this wrought couple began to say their heartfelt goodbyes to their beloved son. The following month, the couple begrudgingly took their son to the courthouse to hear the judge's final verdict. During the trial, Rachel argued that she changed and claimed to want her son back in order to give him the best life she could, adding that as his biological mother, he belonged with her. However, Rachel had a hidden agenda that no one was aware of at the time. She wanted to take the innocent toddler from Jack and Sandra in order to use him for financial gain. In short, she planned to use young Fred's government allowance to buy more narcotics. Judge Richard presided over the incredible case, and as he read through the adoption decree, Fred did something that would forever alter the course of his life. The 3-year-old awoke from his peaceful sleep and giggled as soon as Sandra placed him in his stroller. He was of course oblivious to the magnitude of the current situation, as any toddler would be. Upon opening his eyes, the boy looked at Sandra and suddenly yelled "Mama," with outstretched arms, causing the judge to pause mid-sentence and earning a collective awe from all those present. Sandra, unable to control herself, burst into tears. "It was in that moment that you could just feel the entire atmosphere change," she said fondly, about to tear up once again. The judge, hearing all he needed, immediately ended the hearing despite Rachel's vulgar protests as she screamed at Sandra and Jack for turning her son against her. Though this didn't bother the little family because the judge's final decision was clear, he awarded parental rights to Jack and Sandra as he deemed Rachel too mentally unstable to care for little Fred. However, after the trial, the judge said to the overjoyed couple that his mind was made up the moment he'd heard Fred refer to Sandra as Mama. What an amazing and heartfelt story! Do you think that Jack and Sandra deserved custody of Fred? What do you think about this story? Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.